This one, no name to it at all, but what I've done, a very dear friend of mine, she asked me if I could restore this because it was in a dilapidated state. The sails were broken, the masts were bent all over the place, no rigging, no nothing. The stand didn't exist. But it's an old clipper ship, four-masted, which they came into being, particularly the bigger ones, came in about the 1880s, 1890s through to the early 1900s. Germany were the predominant builders of the four-masted clipper ships, where they rounded Cape Horn frequently. In fact, if you go to YouTube, I cannot remember the name, begins with the letter P, it'll come back to my mind later. The footage live, a sailor must have had a handheld camera and he was up on one of the yard arms, way up on the top of the mast, as the ship rounded Cape Horn. Wild storms, the deck was flooded constantly with the waves. But coming back to this one, this friend of mine, she remembers that her grandfather made it. And she's as old as me, so this would have been made probably in the 1890s, early 1900s. The hull is hand carved out of cedar. The sails are hand carved, made out of pine, soft pine. I'll turn it around and you can see how each sail is handmade. And then the masts are just ordinary wire, probably coat hanger wire. But he even made the handrails out of a back end of a leather shoe, because in those days you couldn't make wood to curve like that. So it's been broken many times, so I managed to restore it as best I can, but it's definitely leather. And then he made the little wheels, carefully soldered it, and the little wheel mechanism to go with it. But then what I did, I had to remast the whole thing, set up all the rigging, get the chain that was lost, and the chain here I've ordered some anchors that we can put the chain onto the anchors that we can hang it correctly. So that's due to come shortly, and that gives you an idea. And then the stand didn't exist, so I've made the stand to settle this in correctly, and then I bought the base also from somewhere else. So that's ready to go back to the original owner. And this lady, she can remember seeing it in her grandfather's place as a little girl way back in the 1950s. So she has very fond memories of her grandfather, and it's taken me 9 years to finish it, and both she and I laugh about it, thinking, yeah, when's it going to get finished? And I keep on saying, oh, sometime next century. Yes, right. This is a model, it's a model of a real ship called the William Ashburner. It was built in the 1870s. It was typical of what they call the topsail schooners. Topsail is the four classic square sails that we see, like the clipper ship over there, or the Cutty Sark, or the Thermopylae, where they're just square sails and they run transverse across the hull. But then you've got these yard arms here where they're schooners, where the sails are in the middle here. And also above here they'll have triangular shaped sails. So they're called topsail schooners. These were popularly built. They were not big. They're probably only about, in the old terminology, 75 to 100 feet long, 30 metres. Some would go up to about 40 metres max. Small cargo ships. This vessel never came to Australia, but it did the phosphate trade between South America and England for about 65 years. That's how long it lasted. Eventually it was sold off twice over back in England, and eventually was wrecked off the coast of Bristol in the west of England, and the west of England, near Wales. And some people I knew built this. Halfway through they stopped building it and started adding a huge deep keel underneath, and they were going to turn it into a motorised model boat. But it got abandoned and left to rot. They already built the deck houses, had made the masts, but nothing was put together. And they abandoned it, and it sat in a rotting box for many years. So I bought it off of them and had to throw the box out because it was just full of all the unwanted things you wanted, and I thought this is going to ruin this model. So I took the block keel off the bottom, which was just silly, put a new keel underneath, repainted the hull, cleaned up all the deck houses, glued all the deck houses on board, finally got the masts into position and rigged it as far as this at the moment. I will be making sails for it later this year, where I'll have to sit down in the sewing machine and hope I don't stick a needle through my fingernail. And we'll dress it up as a fully rigged square sail schooner, which will look spectacular with this particular model here. So it's it's modelled on a real ship of its time.